I spent months planning my mother's wedding, only to realize she chose my ex-boyfriend as her photographer, and now everyone thinks I'm overreacting for refusing to attend. My name is Claire, I'm 27 years old, and up until a few months ago, I would have told you that my mom was my best friend. We've always had a close relationship. One of those mother-daughter bonds that people on the outside would describe as almost too close. She had me when she was just 19, and because my dad left when I was still a baby, it was just the two of us for most of my life. She used to say we were a team, and for a long time, I truly believed that. We went through everything together. When I was in college and barely scraping by, she was the one sending me small care packages with handwritten notes. When she started dating again in her 40s, I was her cheerleader, even though some of the guys she picked were absolute disasters. And when she met David, the man she's now about to marry, I was genuinely happy for her. Or at least, I was at first. I want to make it clear that I didn't go into this situation looking for drama. I didn't want to be the jealous daughter, or the overprotective one who doesn't want her mom to move on. If anything, I was the opposite. I spent months helping her plan her wedding, finding venues, organizing tastings, designing invitations, managing RSVPs. I even postponed a work trip just to be home for her dress fittings. I wanted her day to be perfect. But then I found out who she chose as her wedding photographer, and everything I thought I knew about our relationship completely unraveled. It started with something small. Mom was sitting on the couch one evening, flipping through her iPad, muttering to herself about packages and deposits. I was making tea when she suddenly asked, "Claire, do you still know any photographers in the area? Someone good but affordable." I didn't think much of it. I told her I could send her a few names. I used to date a photographer, Ethan, so I still knew some people from that circle. But I didn't mention him, obviously. That relationship ended 2 years ago, and not in a quiet, mature way. It ended in a way that left me questioning my self-worth for months. Ethan and I dated for 3 years. He was charming, creative, and always knew the right thing to say. My mom adored him. She used to gush about how artistic he was, how he reminded her of the kind of man she wished she'd met when she was my age. That used to make me proud, until I started to notice that she'd text him about his projects, send him recipes, even invite him over for dinner when I wasn't around. It wasn't anything romantic back then, at least not that I knew of. But it always felt off, like she admired him a little too much. When we broke up, after I found out he'd been cheating with a woman he met during a wedding shoot, Mom was actually sadder than I was. She told me I should forgive him. That creative types make mistakes, that I shouldn't let one incident ruin something special. I remember thinking she sounded like she was talking about her relationship, not mine. Fast forward to this wedding. A few days after our chat, she told me she'd found someone perfect to photograph the ceremony. I asked for the name, but she just smiled and said, "You'll see." I figured she was trying to surprise me or something, so I let it go. Then, about 2 weeks later, I was updating the vendor list for her planner when I saw the email confirmation for Ethan Miles' photography. I froze. My stomach literally dropped. I must have stared at that name for a full minute before the reality hit. I double-checked the date, the email, even the attached contract. It was him, my ex, my cheating, manipulative, emotionally draining ex-boyfriend. The same man who'd told me I was too controlling. When I caught him flirting with another woman at a client's event, I confronted her immediately. "Mom, please tell me this is a joke." She looked up from her laptop, totally calm. "What are you talking about?" "This." I held up her iPad, the email open for her to see. "Ethan? You hired Ethan, my ex-boyfriend Ethan." She blinked, like she genuinely didn't understand the problem. "Oh, Claire, you make it sound worse than it is. He's a professional. He does beautiful work. You said yourself he's one of the best photographers around. That was before he cheated on me and wrecked our relationship? I snapped. Her expression hardened, and I could see that familiar look of annoyance she gets when she thinks I'm being dramatic. That was years ago, she said sharply. People change. Besides, this isn't about you, it's about my wedding. And he's giving me a great deal. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. Mom, are you serious right now? There are hundreds of photographers. Why him? Of all people, why would you even reach out to him? She sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. I didn't reach out to him, he reached out to me. He saw my engagement post and sent a message congratulating me. I mentioned I was still looking for a photographer, and he offered to do it for half his usual rate. I would have been stupid not to take it. I just stood there, speechless. The idea that she'd not only spoken to him, but actually hired him, without even thinking about how it might make me feel, it was beyond hurtful. Do you really not see how messed up that is? I asked quietly. She folded her arms. Claire, you're overreacting. He's not your boyfriend anymore. You've both moved on. Why should I punish him, or myself? Because you can't let go of the past. That sentence broke something in me. It wasn't just about the wedding or the photographer. It was about years of her minimizing my feelings, of her seeing me as an extension of herself instead of a separate person. Every time I tried to set a boundary, she'd accuse me of being selfish. Every time I needed her to take my side, she'd rationalize the other person's behavior. I remember sitting on the edge of her couch that night, staring at her, realizing that she wasn't going to change her mind. That she genuinely didn't think she'd done anything wrong. I told her I couldn't be part of the wedding if he was going to be there. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're not really going to skip your own mother's wedding over something so trivial." Trivial. That's the word she used. The conversation ended with me storming out and slamming the door behind me. I cried in my car for almost an hour before I could even start the engine. And since then, things have only gotten worse. Mom told the rest of the family that I was boycotting her wedding out of spite. My aunt texted me saying I should grow up and learn to be happy for other people. My cousin, who I used to be close with, sent me a message that said, "It's just photos, Claire. You're making a scene." It's like no one understands that it's not about the photos. It's about the betrayal. But the part that really haunts me, the part that keeps me awake at night, is that I don't think this was just a thoughtless mistake. I think my mom wanted to work with him. I think she missed him, in her own twisted way. And that realization makes me question everything about our relationship, about what lines she's willing to cross to get what she wants. And that's just where this story begins. The days after that confrontation felt like walking through a fog. I kept expecting my mom to call and apologize, to tell me she hadn't thought it through, that she'd cancel Ethan's booking. But she didn't. Instead, she acted like nothing happened. I found out through Facebook that she'd met up with him for a venue walkthrough. There was a picture Mom, smiling in her pastel dress, and Ethan beside her, camera around his neck, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder like they were old friends. The caption read, "Getting ready for the big day with the best photographer in town." I can't even describe the mix of anger and disbelief that hit me. I threw my phone across the bed and just stared at the ceiling, my heart racing. I thought I was done with him. I'd spent months rebuilding my confidence after our breakup. Therapy, new hobbies, new routines. But seeing his face next to hers made it feel like I was right back where I started. I didn't want to contact her, but after a few sleepless nights, I caved. I called and told her as calmly as I could that her post was disrespectful and that I didn't want my ex involved in any part of her wedding. Her voice was bright and breezy, like she was talking about the weather. "Oh honey, Don't tell me you're still hung up on that. You should have seen him. He's matured so much. He's really focused on his career now, and he spoke so kindly of you. I almost dropped the phone. He what? He said he was sorry for how things ended, she said. He told me he still thinks of you fondly, and that he hopes you're doing well. Isn't that nice? Nice. That word burned in my chest. My ex-boyfriend, who had lied, gaslit, and cheated, was now playing the remorseful gentleman, and my mom had fallen right into his charm trap. I didn't even know what to say. I hung up, shaking with anger, and for the next few days, I tried to distance myself, but distancing myself from my mom isn't easy. She's the kind of person who insists on being involved in every aspect of your life. If I didn't answer her texts, she'd message my friends. If I ignored her calls, she'd drive to my apartment, just to check in. When I finally saw her again, it was at a Sunday family brunch at my aunt's house. I hadn't planned to go, but I didn't want to give everyone more ammunition to call me immature. I showed up, smiled, and tried to blend in. But of course, within minutes my aunt brought up the wedding. We're all so excited for your mom. She showed me the pictures from the engagement shoot. Ethan is amazing. You should see how beautiful she looks. I froze mid-bite. Engagement shoot. Mom looked at me from across the table, smiling like she was waiting for my reaction. Oh, I didn't tell you. We did a little pre-wedding shoot last week. Ethan offered it as part of the package. The entire table was watching me. My uncle, my cousins, my grandmother, all waiting to see if I'd make a scene. I forced a smile so tight my jaw hurt. That's nice. I managed to say, though my voice came out strained. Inside, I was screaming. Later, after brunch, I cornered her in the kitchen. Are you doing this on purpose? I hissed. Doing what? She said, feigning innocence as she washed her hands. Rubbing it in my face? You know what he did to me, and yet you're parading him around like he's some hero. You posted about him. You're taking pictures with him. Why? Are you trying to hurt me? She turned, her expression shifting into that patronizing, motherly calm that always made me feel like a child. Claire, you're projecting. This isn't about you. This is about me wanting a nice wedding. Ethan happens to be talented and affordable. If you can't handle seeing him again, that's your issue. Not mine, that sentence. Your issue, not mine, echoed in my head for days. It reminded me of all the times she'd dismissed my feelings when I was younger. When I cried after Dad missed my birthday, she told me to stop being dramatic. When my first boyfriend dumped me before prom, she laughed and said, "You'll thank him someday." And now, when I told her something genuinely painful, she brushed it off like I was a stranger complaining about the weather. After that brunch, I decided to take a step back entirely. I stopped helping with the wedding. I told her I was too busy with work, and I ignored her calls for a week. But that only made her double down. One night, I came home to find a bouquet of flowers on my doorstep. The card read, "From one of your mom's favorite people. Hope we can all move past the past. I swear my blood turned to ice. He had my address. I called my mom immediately. Did you give Ethan my address? She hesitated. He asked for it because he wanted to send a peace offering. I thought it might help smooth things over. I could barely speak. You gave my ex-boyfriend, the one who cheated on me, my home address. Claire, stop acting like he's dangerous, she said, exasperated. You're overreacting again. He was being kind. Kind. She kept using that word like it meant something. Like his kindness could erase the humiliation I went through when I found out he'd been sleeping with a bridesmaid at one of his gigs. That night, I sat on my couch, surrounded by the scent of those stupid flowers, and I realized something I didn't want to admit. I didn't recognize my mother anymore. In my memories, she was my protector, my confidant, the one person who'd always be on my side. But now, She was defending the man who'd hurt me, excusing his behavior, even inviting him deeper into her life. Into our lives. I started wondering if maybe she'd always been like this, and I'd just never noticed. When I was a kid, she used to call herself emotionally open. What that really meant was that she blurred every boundary between us. I knew about her dating life, her financial problems, her frustrations with her friends. She'd vent to me like I was her therapist. Even when I was too young to understand half of it, I loved her, but I also carried her burdens without realizing it. Now, as an adult, that same dynamic was playing out again. Only this time it wasn't harmless oversharing, it was betrayal. About a week before the wedding, she invited me over. Just to talk. I didn't want to go, but part of me hoped maybe she'd come to her senses. When I got there, she greeted me with a hug like nothing had happened. On the kitchen table were wedding magazines, champagne glasses, and a half-finished seating chart. I noticed right away that there was a photographer's table near the front, with Ethan's name neatly written beside hers and David's. I stared at it. "You're seating him with you." She smiled. "He's practically family, sweetheart. He's been such a help through all this planning." That was it. Something inside me just snapped. I told her she could have her wedding, her photographer, her new husband, and her perfect pictures. But she wouldn't have me there. I wasn't going to stand in that room and pretend everything was fine. She didn't even try to stop me this time. She just sighed, like I was being difficult again, and said, "I'll save you a slice of cake in case you change your mind." The morning of the wedding came faster than I expected, even though I'd told myself I wasn't going. My phone had been blowing up all week, texts from relatives, voicemails from my grandmother, even a few guilt-tripping messages from family friends. Everyone seemed to have the same tone. "You'll regret missing this. Your mother deserves to be happy. Stop making it about yourself." It was incredible how they could all reduce something so painful to a childish tantrum. None of them knew what it felt like to see your mother embrace the man who shattered your confidence. None of them had to deal with that strange, crawling discomfort every time his name came up, or the flashbacks that still hit me when I saw a camera slung over someone's shoulder. But that morning, as I sat in my apartment in my pajamas, I still felt torn. My mind kept replaying memories of Mom and me laughing while trying on dresses, of the nights we stayed up drinking wine while debating color palettes and table settings. For so long, planning this wedding had felt like our project. I'd invested so much of myself into making it beautiful, only to end up completely cut out of it. I opened my phone and saw a new text from her. "Mom, ceremony starts at 3. I left a seat for you next to Aunt Lisa. No hard feelings, okay? Love you." It should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like manipulation disguised as affection. She knew exactly how to word things so I'd doubt myself. So I'd start to wonder if maybe I really was the problem. For a few minutes, I actually considered going, just to keep the peace. But then I pictured them behind the lens, smiling at her, maybe cracking jokes like he used to, maybe even telling her how photogenic she was. The thought made my stomach twist, so I stayed home. Around 4 p.m., I poured myself a glass of wine and turned off my phone. I tried to distract myself by watching a movie, but I couldn't focus. Every few minutes, I'd imagine the ceremony unfolding, my mom walking down the aisle, Ethan snapping photos, my family clapping and cheering. By 6 p.m., my curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on. Hundreds of notifications flooded in, group chats, social media tags, photos already uploaded to Facebook and Instagram. My mom looked radiant, I'll admit that much. She had chosen a champagne colored gown that shimmered in the sunlight, and her smile looked effortless. But what made my heart sink was who she was smiling at. In one of the photos, Ethan stood beside her, his arm around her waist, both of them looking at the camera. Someone had captioned it, "The most talented photographer and the most beautiful bride!" What a duo! A duo. The comments were filled with compliments, people talking about their amazing chemistry. How comfortable. She looked around him. Even a few jokes about how they made such a great team. I could barely breathe. It wasn't just that she had hired him. It was that she was letting people see them as something more. I didn't sleep that night. I kept scrolling, rereading, torturing myself, and then, around 2 a.m., I saw something that made everything click into place. Someone had posted a behind-the-scenes video of the wedding prep, a quick montage of laughter, champagne, makeup brushes, and candid moments. But in one clip, maybe only 5 seconds long, Ethan was standing beside my mom, whispering something in her ear. She laughed and touched his arm. It was brief, intimate, and painfully familiar. It wasn't just professional warmth. I'd seen that look before, on her face when she talked about him years ago, back when he was still mine. I felt sick. The next day, I called my aunt. I needed to know if anyone else had noticed. "Did you see how close they were?" I asked, trying to sound casual. My aunt hesitated. "Oh, well, your mom was glowing, and Ethan was around a lot. They seemed to get along, but that's normal, right? For photos." I pushed. "Was it just photos?" She went quiet for a moment before saying, "Claire, you know your mom. She's affectionate. Maybe don't read too much into it." Her voice sounded uneasy though. Like she'd seen something but didn't want to be the one to say it out loud. That was enough for me. A few days later, I went over to my mom's house to return a box of leftover decor items she'd left at my place. She answered the door wearing a robe, her hair slightly tousled, and she looked startled to see me. "Claire! I didn't think you'd stop by," she said, stepping aside. Her living room was full of wedding stuff, flowers, gift bags, framed photos waiting to be hung. And right there on the coffee table, I saw a framed 8x10 print of one of the shots Ethan had taken. It was her and David in the foreground, but in the reflection of a mirror behind them, you could clearly see Ethan, smiling, focused, with his camera raised. It almost felt symbolic. We made small talk for a while. She told me the wedding had been perfect, that everyone had commented on how talented Ethan was. I barely heard her. I just kept staring at that photo, at his reflection watching over her like some ghost from my past. Finally, I asked, "Have you talked to him since?" She hesitated before saying, "He stopped by yesterday to drop off some proofs." "Stopped by? Here?" "Yes, Claire, calm down. He's a professional. We went through the photos together. They're stunning." I stared at her, waiting for some hint of remorse, some acknowledgement of how this might look, or how it might feel for me. But there was nothing. Then she said something that froze my blood. "You know, I forgot how easy he is to talk to. He really listens. David likes him too. They get along great." I felt something in my chest splinter. "Do you hear yourself? You're talking about my ex like he's family." She gave me that same patronizing smile again. "Oh, sweetheart. You really need to let go of the past." That was the moment I realized the line between carelessness and cruelty had disappeared completely. When I left her house, I couldn't shake the image of her face when she mentioned him. That little spark in her eyes. It wasn't just admiration. It was something deeper, something almost giddy. The following week, the final proof gallery was posted online, and she sent me the link. So I wouldn't feel left out. I told myself not to look. But I did. Photo after photo of her and David smiling, laughing, dancing, and sprinkled between them, candids of her and Ethan. Him adjusting her veil, her brushing his sleeve. A shot of her laughing mid-conversation with him, her hand on his arm again. And then there was one photo that I still can't get out of my head. It wasn't in the main gallery. It was in a hidden folder labeled Extras. She must not have realized it was visible. It was a close-up of my mom, looking directly at Ethan's camera, smiling softly, her hair catching the light. It wasn't posed, it was intimate, tender. The kind of photo someone takes when they know their subject deeply. The caption metadata said private. For her, that's when I knew. Whatever was going on between them, it wasn't just professional. And as much as I wanted to deny it, deep down, I already understood what that meant. It took me a full day to calm down enough to even think straight after seeing that hidden folder. My first impulse was to call her and demand answers, but every time I reached for my phone, I imagined how she'd respond. That same patronizing sigh, the same, "You're overreacting, Claire," and then the inevitable guilt trip about how much stress I was causing her during such a special time. So I decided to do something I rarely do. I waited. A few days later, she called me first. "Ethan's dropping off the wedding album tomorrow," she said, her voice bright. "Do you want to come see it?" It was like she was daring me. Maybe she genuinely thought this was a peace offering. Or maybe she wanted to prove that everything between them was innocent. I couldn't tell anymore. But I agreed. The next afternoon, I showed up at her house with my stomach in knots. She greeted me with "I didn't return." "Oh, good, you came," she said, her tone too cheerful. And there he was, standing in her living room flipping through a stack of glossy prints. Ethan. My ex. He looked almost exactly the same, maybe a bit older, a bit more polished. His hair was shorter, his shirt neatly pressed. His camera bag slung across his shoulder like always. When he saw me, he froze for a second, then smiled, that same fake, sincere smile I used to fall for. "Hey, Claire," he said softly. "It's been a while." "Not long enough," I muttered. Mom's eyes flicked between us, clearly uncomfortable, but pretending not to be. "Let's not make this awkward," she said quickly. "Come sit. You have to see these." They turned out beautifully. I didn't sit. I stood behind her as she flipped through the pages of the album, her voice light and admiring. "Look at this one. Ethan captured the exact moment David said his vows. Isn't that incredible?" I barely looked at the photos. My eyes kept darting to Ethan, who stood a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, pretending to look at the floor. The air felt thick with everything unspoken. Finally, I asked, "How long have you two been talking?" They both froze. My mom turned slowly. "Excuse me. You heard me?" I said. "How long? Before the wedding? After? When did you decide this was okay?" Her cheeks flushed. "Claire, that's completely inappropriate." I cut her off. "Don't lie to me. The hidden ones." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Hidden ones?" he echoed, his tone defensive. "Yes. The ones labeled private. For her." Her mouth dropped open for just a second, just long enough for me to know I'd hit the mark. Then she straightened. "Claire, you're misunderstanding. That folder wasn't. Save it." I snapped. "Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I can't tell what's happening here?" Ethan stepped forward slightly, his voice calm, practiced. "Claire, listen. Nothing inappropriate happened. Your mom and I just reconnected professionally. We were both adults about it." "Professionally?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it now? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you found yourself another woman to manipulate." My mom's eyes hardened. "That's enough," she said sharply. "You don't get to talk to him that way. He's been nothing but respectful." That sentence, defending him, again, broke something in me. "You're defending him," I said, my voice shaking. "After everything he did. After you held me while I cried over him. After you told me he wasn't worth a damn. You looked me in the eye and said I deserved better. And now he's sitting in your house, flipping through your wedding pictures like he belongs here." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Do you have any idea what this feels like? To lose him, and then lose you to him too." She stared at me, her lips pressed tightly together. For a second, I thought I saw guilt flash across her face. But then it vanished. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said coldly. But you don't control who I work with. I'm allowed to have my own life, Claire. You've made this entire thing about you from the start. It was such a rehearsed line, so devoid of empathy, that I just laughed. Not a happy laugh, but one of those hollow, broken laughs that hurt your throat. You're right, I said finally. You're allowed to have your own life. But don't expect me to be a part of it. I turned to leave, but Ethan spoke up. Claire. Wait, I spun back around. No, you don't get to say my name. Not after what you did. You can fool her, but you don't fool me. Then I walked out. I half expected my mom to call after me, to run out and try to fix things, but she didn't. The door clicked softly behind me, and that was it. For the first time, I realized just how alone I really was. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone. The silence from her side was deafening. No messages, no apologies. Just a void where my mother used to be. A week later, my aunt called. She said there were rumors that people had seen Mom and Ethan together, at lunch, at a photography exhibit, even at a local fair. She sounded uncomfortable, like she didn't want to believe it either. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Then, 2 weeks after that, my mom posted a photo, a casual shot of her and Ethan standing side by side at an art show, smiling. Her caption read, "So grateful for unexpected friendships." Life surprises you when you least expect it. The comments poured in, hearts, clapping emojis, people saying things like, "You two look amazing together." I didn't comment. I didn't call. I just stared at the screen for a long time, then closed the app and threw my phone onto the couch. That was the day I finally blocked both of them. I wish I could say that cutting contact brought instant peace, but it didn't. For months, I carried this weight, this mix of betrayal, sadness, and something worse, shame. Because no matter how many times I reminded myself that I was the one wronged, a small part of me still felt like maybe I wasn't enough. Not for Ethan, not for her. Therapy helped. Slowly. My therapist told me that what I'd experienced was a kind of emotional boundary violation. That my mother's behavior wasn't love. It was control dressed as affection. She said people like my mom confuse closeness with ownership, and that sometimes the healthiest thing a person can do is step away, even if it feels cruel. It's been 8 months now. I haven't seen her since that day. I hear updates through my aunt sometimes. Apparently, she and Ethan are official. She hasn't said the words out loud, but everyone knows. He's even photographed her at a few charity events. I deleted every photo of him from my past, but I couldn't bring myself to delete the ones of her. Even now, I look at old pictures of us and wonder when exactly she stopped being my mom and became someone I didn't recognize. Maybe the truth is that she didn't change overnight. Maybe she was always capable of this, and I just refused to see it because I needed her to be my safe place. Now my safe place is quiet mornings with coffee, long walks alone. Learning to trust myself again. I've stopped waiting for an apology that will never come. Sometimes I still think about the wedding that never was. The version where I walked her down the aisle, where we hugged after the ceremony, where she thanked me for everything I'd done. That version of reality existed once, in another life. But now, when people ask me about family, I just say, it's complicated. Because it is. I spent months planning my mother's wedding, not realizing that in the process, I was also planning the funeral for the relationship we used to have. And in a way, maybe that's what I needed. Closure, even if it came wrapped in betrayal. At least now, I finally know where we both stand. What do you think about this story? Did you expect this ending? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if you want to see more.